Hello and welcome to BYJU'S Exam Prep IAS. I welcome all of you to today's daily quiz session with us. And before we begin, looking at today's questions, here's a quick gentle reminder. In case you are looking for expert guidance for the upcoming UPSC Civil Services exam, now look no further. You can fill up the Google form that has been provided in the description box of this video. How will it help you? Because if you fill up the form, we will get in touch with you immediately and arrange a one-on-one counseling session from our experts. There is one more announcement that is key before we start today's video, and it is that at 7 p.m. today on BYJU'S Exam Prep IAS, we will be talking about important dimensions of the recent budget. The session will be highly informative for you because it will cover all the big and small aspects related to the budget critical for the upcoming exam. So do tune in and do watch the video. And now let's come to today's main agenda and let's have a look at the first question on this screen. It says, consider the following statements. The first statement talks about ASHA. Now ASHA refers to ASHA workers. This stands for Accredited Social Health Activists. We are talking with regards to rural health care in India. Why has this question been taken up today? The reason why we are talking about this question is a piece of news in today's release, which says that as a part of the interim budget 24, the government has decided to provide ASHA workers and Anganwadi workers. Now, Anganwadi workers are those who are trying to work to promote preschooling in the country. A very important recommendation of the National Education Policy 2020. So both these workers, the healthcare workers and the Anganwadi workers, will be given an health insurance cover under the Ayushman Bharat Pradhan Mantri Jan Arogya Yojana. In this regard, the first statement here says ASHA program was initiated as a part of National Rural Health Mission back in 2005. This is a correct statement. Because indeed, the concept of ASHA workers came as a part of National Rural Health Mission. What is the duty of ASHA workers? Now, ASHA workers are often also referred to as last mile health workers. The main agenda behind the work done by ASHA workers is to connect the rural, poor community with the healthcare system of our country. So therefore, they often perform the groundwork function of going door to door in the villages, in the marginalized communities, and sensitizing people, informing people about the importance of safe health practices, which includes not only making people aware about safe hygiene, sanitation, they also talk about family planning, they talk about menstrual hygiene. They create awareness regarding immunization vaccine. Besides, they also take care of medical care to pregnant women by providing them free folic iron supplements. They also encourage a culture of good reproductive health by making these women aware about the importance of institutional delivery in the country. Because even today, in our country, the rate of institutional delivery is low. And it is manifested in the high rate of maternal mortality rate. And hence the ASHA workers are doing an important function here for the rural poor people by spreading the agenda of health care. So the first statement here is valid. Talking about the second statement, it mentions Mission Indradhanush was launched by the Indian government, and it is related to the immunization or vaccination of children and pregnant women. Once again, this is a valid statement, because the Mission Indradhanush has been constantly relaunched by the government in different phases on mission mode. The purpose is to cover more than 90% of Indian population with vaccination against preventable yet fatal diseases. Some of these diseases which are included for vaccination under this mission include tuberculosis, specifically in children. We talk about diphtheria, pneumonia, meningitis, polio, measles. So all these diseases which do have a high mortality rate are covered through providing vaccination to people under Mission Indradhanush. So absolutely it's a valid statement. And now the third statement here talks about Ayushman Bharat. Rather, it talks about a yojana, a scheme called Pradhan Mantri Jan Arogya Yojana. This symbolizes the intention of the union government of creating a healthy Indian population, a disease-free Indian nation. And this, in fact, is one of the largest of its own kind free health insurance initiative by the government, which is financed completely by the government. So yes, the third statement here is valid because it is the largest health insurance, rather assurance scheme to people. The concept of PMJAY came into prominence as it was a key recommendation of the National Health Policy of 2017. The larger initiative, the larger intention is to promote India's commitment towards fulfilling Sustainable Development Goals 17. And the Sustainable Development Goal 3 talks about good health and well-being for everyone. So indeed, all three statements here are correct, making D the valid answer. And with this, let's proceed with the second question on our screen. The second question, once again, is a set of two statements. The first statement talks about Kendriya Grihmantri Dakshata Padak. We are talking about a new award. That's the reason why we are talking about this question today. We have analyzed this question in the light of a new development. The Honorable Home Ministry has announced that a new award, a new medal has been launched, which will replace certain earlier existing medals. Who will be the target recipient of the medal? So the medal, as announced by the government, is known as Kendriya Grihmantri Dakshata Padak, and this is intended to be conferred to people who have excellent contribution in the field of counter-terrorism. Apart from that, fighting drug use, preventing the culture of narcotics smuggling and arms smuggling. So indeed, it is about internal security. And in this regard, we have these two statements which talk about this new medal. The first statement says, Kendriya Grihmantri Dakshata Padak is named after merging Union Home Ministry's Special Operation Medal. Now, these four were existing earlier. The Medal for Excellence in Investigation, Asadharan Asuchana Kushalta Padak, which stands for excellent contribution in the field of intelligence gathering. And apart from that, awards for meritorious service in forensic science. So indeed, these will now be replaced by the new medal known as Dakshata Padak. So the first statement here is valid. And let's look at the second statement. It says that one interesting development about this medal is that now staff or the personnel of Central Board of Indirect Taxes and Customs, the CBIC, will also be considered for these award, for this new award. And they will also be the targeted recipient of this award for excellence in case in the area of prevention of narcotic smuggling. And yes, this is also a relevant statement with regards to this new medal. So we can say that both these statements are valid, making C the correct answer. With this, let's hop on to the third question. The third question talks with reference to alternate medicine. You might be wondering, why are we focusing on alternate system of medication? The reason is very clear. Now, after the COVID-19 pandemic, as the world slipped into an era of superbugs. What are superbugs? Superbugs, as you might have heard in the news, are a category of organisms, pathogens, who are so resistant that no matter what antibiotic is administered to a person suffering from infection, disease, they refuse to die. These are highly evolved, highly mutated form of bacteria and viruses and fungi, which impact human body, leading to unknown kind of fatalities, a high rate of mortality, a very high mortality rate. And this is happening because of overuse and abuse of antibiotics. You might remember how during the COVID pandemic, many people received unnecessary antibiotics, unnecessary steroid, which had led to a new crisis, the new crisis of fungal infections which were unknown before. Problems like flesh-eating bacteria, brain-eating amoeba, the yellow fungus, all these were unknown earlier. Why? Because we have abused medication a little too much. In that regard, the government of India is strongly committed of sensitizing people, making people aware that rather than following the conventional medication which could have devastating impact on human body, why not we consider the age-old alternate medication and healing system? In this regard, the most important mention is the Ayush Ministry that was initiated back in 2014. What was the purpose of the ministry? The ministry is a dedicated organ which deals with alternate healing systems including Ayurveda, yoga, naturopathy, homeopathy, siddha, and many such systems of medication which are age-old. Not only are they important for the heritage, also they barely have a devastating effect. They can be very effective in controlling preventable diseases, the non-communicable ones and the communicable ones both. And in this regard, there is a very interesting piece of news today which says that Union Ayush Minister, Shri Sonowal, he has inaugurated the Rashtriya Arogya Mela. This is an event which aims to create awareness among people and distribute samples of alternate medicine among people to make sure that people readily accept the alternate medication system which is indigenous and yet effective. And in this regard, let's come back to the three statements of our question. First statement says, Global Center for Traditional Medicine was set up by the World Health Organization in Uttarakhand to promote traditional medicine system. The statement is half correct only, because indeed the Global Center for Traditional Medication was initiated as a joint initiative of the Indian government and the World Health Organization, but it was not in Uttarakhand. In fact, it happened in Jamnagar, situated in Gujarat. So that's why the first statement becomes invalid. The second statement says this initiative, this global center, was the first of its own kind in the world to spread traditional medicine across the globe. And that's also true, because after years, after centuries, we saw that a dedicated setup is being created for promoting traditional medicine globally, and the second statement is valid. Now the third statement, in the context of traditional medicine, it says that traditional Korean medicine, which is also referred to as Sova Rigpa, is a part of Ayush. What do you think? Indeed, this statement is also semi-correct, because talking about Sova Rigpa, this is often also called as the Amchi system of medication. What is this? It is a medicine system which is completely recognized by the Ayush Ministry, because this also talks about traditional healing. But the problem is, it is not a Korean medicine, it is a Tibetan medicine. Not only Tibet, in fact, it is found in certain other countries like Mongolia, Vietnam, sometimes in the pockets of tribal belts of northeast India as well. So therefore, Sova Rigpa is indeed a part of Ayush but not Korean. So the statement becomes wrong. And hence we are left with only one valid statement, that's 2, making B the correct answer. And with this, let's proceed with question 4th. It again talks about 3 important statements, and the first statement says both India and Bhutan are the members of Bay of Bengal Initiative for Multi-Sectoral, Technical and Economic Cooperation, abbreviated as the BIMSTEC. It's a valid statement, because BIMSTEC, being an organization of certain South Asian countries, it does include India, Bhutan. In fact, why India, Bhutan? It also includes countries like Nepal, it includes countries like Myanmar, it includes countries like Bangladesh, as well as Thailand, as well as, of course, India, Sri Lanka. So yes, the first statement is valid. Now the second statement, Situi port, a topic that has been making news constantly since the last year. Situi port is a deep sea port in the Bay of Bengal, which was jointly inaugurated by India and Bhutan. What do you think? Indeed, it's a deep sea port. Yes, it is in the Bay of Bengal, but it is not a joint initiative of India and Bhutan. In fact, it is a joint initiative of India and Myanmar. Why? Because when we talk about the Situi port, let's remember it is situated in the Rakhine state of Myanmar. Rakhine state was also big time in news when we talk about refugee crisis in India, because the Rohingya exodus also happened from the Rakhine area. Earlier it was called as the Arakan area. So the second statement then is incorrect. The third statement, Kaladan River flows through the state of Manipur in India. The Kaladan River indeed flows through one of the northeastern states, but that's not Manipur. In fact, that's Mizoram. The river is very, very critical for being situated in such a critical geopolitical region, and hence statement 3 will not be valid. So we are left with only the first statement as being valid, and yes, A will be the right answer. And now we can talk about why was this question picked up today for analysis, because of an article in the Economic Times which says that the recent announcement made by the union government took many by surprise. Now, in the light of the ongoing tussle between India and Maldives, the total budget that has been allocated as grant to neighbors by India, for Myanmar it has been reduced. But the country which is now having the largest share in India's foreign grant to its neighbors happens to be Bhutan. Now, as per the announcement by the government, in the light of India's neighborhood first policy, Bhutan is receiving about 2,400 crore rupees, which is a massive amount of assistance that's been provided from India to its neighbor. And under the Ministry of External Affairs grant portfolio, this is about more than 41% of the total grant that's been given in total. So that's why we analyzed this question. And now let's come to the PYQ of today, coming to you from 2017. The PYQ is slightly historical in nature. It talks about who among the following were or was associated with the introduction of Raiyatwadi settlement in India during the British rule. Why was Raiyatwadi, Mahalwadi, Talukdari, Zamindari systems so important? Because these were all the revenue collection systems that were introduced by the British government in India, which were abolished much later on as India became independent in order to promote social economic justice in rural India. But back then, the Raiyatwadi system was a very important system. And why was it different from Zamindari system? Because under the Raiyatwadi system, the British government started collecting land revenue directly from the cultivator rather than having a middleman in between. So who introduced this system? Was it one, Lord Cornwallis? No, because Lord Cornwallis is associated with permanent settlement, a system that was quite opposite in nature. A land revenue system where the peasants or the cultivators had to give a fixed amount of revenue year after year to the British government to make sure that in the face of an agriculture crisis or any other emergency, the British revenue does not get impacted. So therefore, Lord Cornwallis was associated with permanent settlement, Zamindari, but not with Raiyatwadi. But yes, we do talk about the Thomas Munro and Alexander Red as people who are associated with the Raiyatwadi system. In fact, there's an interesting thing to note that Raiyatwadi system is often referred to as the Munro system. It was introduced initially in the state of Tamil Nadu, the region of Tamil Nadu, and the purpose was to take revenue directly from the cultivator. So now we can say that 2 and 3 are correct and C is the right answer. Now we can discuss the fact of today, an interesting fact that talks about tribal welfare. Now we know that given the diversity and the large segment of Indian tribal population, which differs dramatically from one state to another, there is an initiative of the Indian government that is referred to as TriFed. TriFed stands for Tribal Cooperative Marketing Development Federation of India. What does it do and why is it important? It is important from the perspective of GS Paper 2 Tribal Development. It could also be important from the perspective of GS Paper 3 Economics, Indian Economy, also for GS Paper 1 Social Issues. It talks about how, created back in 1987, TriFed was created as a multi-state cooperative society under the Act of 1984. Now do remember that now, as of today, multi-state cooperatives are it's a topic of immense importance because the Ministry of Cooperatives was introduced in India just a few years before as a dedicated wing to promote Sahakar culture, cooperative culture, which now gives a lot of importance to multi-state cooperatives with a recent amendment also that was done to the Act. In this regard, TriFed was initiated as a cooperative society. What was the main purpose? The purpose was economic empowerment of poor tribal communities. Why? Because we know that tribals are groups of people who depend for their livelihood as well as their culture, religious needs upon the forests. They are very closely associated with their habitats. This is one reason why most of the products that they manufacture by hand, most of their consumption needs are taken care of from the forest products itself. But the problem is that, given that most of the tribals do not have formal education, they do not have awareness regarding marketing and commercializing their skills. If at all they plan to sell their products in market, there are middlemen involved. Because of that, the real benefit, the real cost benefit does not reach these tribals and they continue to be poor. They are often exploited. To avoid this situation and to promote a culture of self-employment, skill enhancement among tribals, the government has initiated the TriFed process, under which the government itself goes and gives an MSP, a minimum support price on MFP. Which means the government is ready to purchase at a fixed rate all the minor forest products that are created by these tribals. What are minor forest products? These are products that are created by tribals themselves after taking raw materials from the forest, from nature. And hence, the government purchases them. These could include products like honey, herbal medications of tribals, baskets, other weaving, or you can say goods, or sometimes even carpets. It is very diverse from one state to another, of course. And all these products, once purchased by the government, ensures a standard wage for the tribals. Then the government proceeds to sell them either online, because we do have tribal products available in various e-commerce websites. How does this help? It helps them because not only will the tribals get an assured income, but tomorrow in case, for example, the COVID lockdown happens, the tribal income will not suffer. In fact, during COVID lockdown, the government started an initiative of selling the minor forest products made by tribals through mobile vans, a door-to-door sale, just to make sure that their profits do not dip and they aren't exploited by directly going to the market in the hands of outsiders. So now it will definitely help in creating a sustainable livelihood for these tribals. Apart from that, TriFed is also contributing by creating a culture of self-help groups, which is very integral to India. Whether we talk about the National Rural Livelihood Mission, or we talk about the Urban Rural Livelihood Mission, whether we talk about the Pradhan Mantri Antyodaya Yojana, everywhere, whenever it comes to promoting employment for the marginalized, the government has given a lot of importance to self-help groups. Small groups of people made on voluntary basis by themselves, by putting their own capital into it. And then together these self-help groups start some kind of manufacturing or business. Once they are successful, they also attract microcredit or microfinance. Remember the name of NABARD in this regard. You should also remember the name of the first official self-help group of India, SEVA, that was initiated by Ila Bhatt, which had empowered many rural poor women who came together and started massive business. On this regard, TriFed, its functions, and recent post-COVID initiatives taken by the government for tribal welfare become very, very important. So it's a must that you are informed about these. And now, with today's session winding up, I take your leave. Thank you so much for being with us and see you soon.